The afternoon sun was beginning to dip, stretching long shadows across the quiet suburban street. The golden glow of the setting day painted the pavement in warm hues. But to 17-year-old Malik, it was just another walk home from school. His backpack sagged on his shoulders, stuffed with textbooks and the basketball shoes he carried everywhere. A pair of earphones dangled loosely around his neck, though he hadn't bothered to play any music. He liked the sound of the world when it was winding down, the rustle of leaves, the chatter of neighbors, the occasional car rolling past. Malik wasn't in a rush. His mother had texted earlier, reminding him to pick up some milk from the corner store before coming home. His younger sister was waiting for him so they could do homework together. He thought of her smiling face and quick laugh, and it made his steps lighter. He adjusted the straps of his backpack, glanced at the rows of tidy houses, and sighed. Just another ordinary day, he thought. Nothing special. But ordinary days can unravel in ways no one expects. A police cruiser turned the corner ahead of him. Malik barely noticed at first. He kept walking, his sneakers squeaking faintly against the concrete. But when the cruiser slowed down, he frowned. The hum of the engine matched his pace. He looked sideways, trying not to stare, and noticed two officers inside. Their eyes were fixed on him. The cruiser pulled over abruptly, tires crunching against the curb. The passenger door swung open, and an officer stepped out, adjusting his belt as he did. "Hey you, stop right there," the officer barked. Malik froze. He turned, startled, pointing to himself. "Me? Yeah, you. Where you headed?" "Home," Malik answered carefully. His voice cracked slightly, betraying his nerves. The officer's partner emerged from the driver's side, and together they approached, boots heavy against the pavement. Malik swallowed hard. He had seen enough news stories to know how quickly these encounters could spiral, even when you'd done nothing wrong. He raised his hands slightly, palms open, not in surrender, but in caution. "I didn't do anything," he said quietly. The first officer narrowed his eyes, scanning Malik from head to toe. The hoodie, the backpack, the brown skin. The second officer walked in a slow circle, as if studying him from every angle. "You match the description," the officer said flatly. Malik blinked. "Description? Of what?" "Suspicious activity. A theft nearby. You fit what was reported." His heart raced. "I just came from school," Malik tried to explain. "I have my books right here. Look." He tugged the zipper on his backpack, pulling it halfway open to show the thick geometry textbook inside. But the officers weren't convinced. One reached for the radio on his shoulder, muttering something Malik couldn't catch. The other kept staring, arms crossed, jaw tight. A woman walking her dog slowed as she passed, eyes darting nervously between the officers and Malik. A man across the street paused with his grocery bags, watching. A car slowed down, then rolled on, its driver rubbernecking. The weight of strangers' eyes pressed down on Malik, making his throat dry. "I promise, I didn't do anything," Malik said again, louder this time. "Hands behind your back," the officer ordered. Malik's breath caught. "What? Why? I haven't." "Do it. Now." His mind spun. He thought of his mother waiting for him, his sister at the kitchen table. He thought of the milk he was supposed to pick up, still sitting in a store cooler. He thought of the headlines he had seen too many times. Teen arrested. Suspect in custody. Investigation ongoing. The world blurred. He felt the cold metal of handcuffs snap around his wrists before he could protest again. The sting bit into his skin. His backpack slid off his shoulder and thudded against the pavement. His geometry book spilled out, pages splaying in the breeze. "Please," Malik said desperately, voice rising now. "You're making a mistake. I'm not who you're looking for." But his words bounced off their hard expressions. To them, he was already guilty. The small crowd gathering around shifted uneasily. Some murmured in low voices. A young woman held her phone high, recording. Malik saw the red light blinking. His chest ached with both humiliation and fear. He wanted to disappear, to be invisible, to wake up and realize this was some cruel dream. But the cuffs pinched tighter with every movement, a reminder of how real this was. One of the officers grabbed his arm, steering him roughly toward the cruiser. Malik stumbled, catching himself on the hood. The heat of the metal burned his palms, but he barely noticed. His mind screamed with questions, with dread. "Please, call my mom," he begged. "I didn't do anything." "You're wrong." The officer ignored him, opening the back door of the cruiser. The dark interior gaped like a trap. Malik turned his head, searching the faces in the crowd. Strangers looked back, some sympathetic, some indifferent, some whispering. The woman with the phone recording mouthed something. Maybe stay strong, but Malik couldn't be sure. His vision blurred with tears he refused to let fall. The sound of the cuffs clinking echoed in his ears. The low hum of the cruiser's engine vibrated through his chest. The world seemed too quiet, except for the pounding of his own heart. And then, just as the officers pushed him toward the car, a voice rang out from the crowd. Wait, he didn't do it. Every head turned. The officers froze. Malik's breath hitched. The boy's future, his freedom, his dignity, his truth, now balanced on the edge of those words. Wait, he didn't do it. The words cracked through the tense air like a whip. Every head in the crowd pivoted toward the voice. Malik, halfway shoved into the back seat of the cruiser, twisted his neck, desperate to see who had spoken. It was an older man, maybe in his late 50s, standing at the edge of the sidewalk. He wore a worn gray jacket and carried a paper bag under one arm. His face was lined with age, his eyes sharp with conviction. He pointed directly at Malik, his voice steady and firm. I saw the kid the whole time, the man said. He came out of the school and walked straight down this street. He didn't go anywhere near that store. The officers stiffened, exchanging glances. One of them tightened his grip on Malik's arm. Sir, you need to step back. This is police business. But the man didn't back down. He shifted his bag and raised his chin. I've lived here 20 years. I know this neighborhood, and I know what I saw. You've got the wrong person. A murmur rippled through the small crowd. A few people nodded. The woman with the phone recording shifted closer, her lens trained on the officers' faces now. Malik's chest heaved, hope sparking where despair had been. See, he pleaded. He knows. I didn't do anything. The first officer's jaw flexed. He pressed the radio on his shoulder again, muttering codes and numbers. The second officer grabbed Malik more roughly, pushing him fully against the cruiser. Until we confirm the report, he's coming with us, the officer snapped. But you're wrong, Malik shouted, his voice breaking. I didn't steal anything. The older man stepped forward, but another officer from a second cruiser, who had just arrived, blocked him with an outstretched hand. Sir, step back now. Malik's eyes darted desperately between the man and the crowd. More phones were raised. More whispers carried through the air. The story was no longer contained to the street. It was spreading, caught on shaky recordings that would find their way online before long. Still, the officers didn't yield. They shoved Malik into the back seat of the cruiser, the cuffs biting deeper into his wrists as he tried to resist. The door slammed shut behind him, sealing him inside. The older man pounded his fist against the window. You're making a mistake, he yelled, voice muffled through the glass. Malik pressed his forehead against the cool window, tears finally sliding down his cheeks. The world outside blurred, the worried faces, the phones filming, the orange streaks of sunset across the sky. His life had tilted in a matter of minutes, spinning out of control. The engine roared. The cruiser lurched forward. The crowd's voices faded into the distance. Inside the car, Malik's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. The cage of the back seat pressed in on him. He tried to steady himself, but his hands shook uncontrollably. He thought of his mother again. What would she think when she saw him like this, accused, restrained, treated like a criminal? The officers said little during the ride, speaking only in clipped, coded words over the radio. Malik stared at the back of their heads, at the faint glow of the dashboard lights. Every second felt heavier than the last. Finally, the cruiser turned sharply into the police station lot. The building loomed ahead, gray and imposing, with a flag flapping lazily outside. The car rolled into a space, brakes squealing slightly. Out, the officer barked, yanking the door open. Malik stumbled as he was pulled out, his legs shaky from both fear and anger. The cuffs jingled as they led him inside. The fluorescent lights of the station buzzed overhead, harsh and cold. Officers bustled past, papers shuffled, phones rang. But to Malik, it was a blur of sound and motion. His focus narrowed to the grip on his arms, the echo of his sneakers against the tile floor, and the pounding of his heart in his ears. They guided him into a small, windowless room, an interrogation room. The walls were stark white, the table bolted to the floor, 2 metal chairs waiting. A camera sat in the corner, its red light glowing faintly. The officers sat him down, securing the cuffs to a metal loop on the table. Malik felt chained like an animal. You want to tell us where you were this afternoon? One of the officers asked, flipping open a notepad. Malik's throat tightened. I told you already. I was walking home from school. That's it. The officer's pen scratched against the paper. The other leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes never leaving Malik. There was a theft at a store not far from here. You matched the description, the first officer said again. What description? Malik demanded. Because all I hear is that I'm a black kid in a hoodie. That's not a crime. The officer's eyes hardened. Watch your tone. Malik shook his head, fighting back tears. You've got the wrong person. Call the man who saw me walking home. He can tell you. Call my mom. She'll tell you where I was supposed to be. But the officers didn't move. Silence stretched across the room, broken only by the ticking of a clock on the wall. Minutes turned into an hour. Then 2. Malik sat alone when they left the room, the camera still watching him. His wrists throbbed, his stomach growled, his hope dimmed. Finally, the door creaked open. Another officer stepped in, this one different, softer in demeanor, mid-30s, with tired eyes. He carried a file folder under his arm. He sat across from Malik, sighing heavily. Son, you need to be honest with us. Things will go easier if you just tell the truth. Malik slammed his palms on the table, the cuffs rattling loudly. I am telling the truth, he cried. I didn't do anything. Why won't anyone listen to me? The officer opened the folder, flipping through papers. Malik caught a glimpse. Reports, photos, a grainy security camera still of a boy in a hoodie. The officer pushed the photo forward. This was taken an hour ago. Look familiar. Malik leaned in, heart hammering. The image was blurry, the figure unclear. But the outline of the hoodie, the height, the backpack, it could have been him. He shook his head violently. That's not me. That's not me, I swear. The officer studied him, expression unreadable. Then he leaned closer, voice low. If it isn't you, then why does it look so much like you? The camera light in the corner blinked steadily, recording every word, every expression, every crack in Malik's resolve. His entire future now hinged on how he could prove what he already knew, his innocence. And just as Malik opened his mouth to protest again, the door to the interrogation room burst open, and someone unexpected walked in. The door slammed against the wall with a loud bang. Malik flinched, his heart lurching in his chest. The officer across the table turned, irritation flashing across his face. But the moment his eyes fell on the figure who entered, his expression stiffened. It was Malik's mother. She stormed into the room with a ferocity Malik had never seen before, her coat still half-zipped, her hair hurriedly tied back. Behind her trailed the older man from the street, the one who had shouted in Malik's defense, along with a young woman clutching her phone tightly, the one who had been recording everything. I want to know why my son is in handcuffs, his mother's voice thundered, trembling with both fury and fear. Malik's chest tightened. Mom, he choked, tears threatening to spill. The officer at the table rose halfway, holding up a hand. Ma'am, you can't just. You don't tell me what I can't do, she snapped, slamming her palm down on the cold metal table. Her voice shook, but her eyes burned with fire. You have my son in here like he's some criminal, and you haven't even bothered to listen to witnesses. He is 17. He's a student. He has done nothing wrong. The older man stepped forward, adjusting the paper bag under his arm. I told you officers already, he said, voice calm but firm. I saw him walking from the school. He never went near that store. You've got the wrong kid. The young woman raised her phone, the recording still on screen. And I've got this whole thing on video, she added. From the street to when you shoved him in the cruiser. Do you really want this going online? The room fell silent for a moment, the buzzing fluorescent lights the only sound. Malik's mother turned her glare on the officer, her chest heaving. Unlock those cuffs. Now. Malik's wrists ached, his skin rubbed raw from the metal. He stared at the officer, silently begging. But the officer didn't reach for the keys. Instead, he picked up the blurry surveillance photo again and held it between them. The suspect we're looking for matches your son's description. Same hoodie, same height, same build. If we let every kid walk out because his mom says he's innocent, what kind of police work would that be? His mother's jaw tightened. You call this police work? You're targeting him because of how he looks, not because of what he's done. He is not your suspect. Malik's heart pounded harder. He wanted to scream, to tear free, to shake them until they saw the truth. Instead, his voice came out small, cracking. Please, just listen. I was walking home. That's it. I didn't do anything. Why won't you believe me? The older man placed a hand on the table, steady. There's a security camera outside the school. Check it. You'll see him leaving when he said he did. The officer's expression flickered. For a second, Malik thought he might finally give in. But then the door opened again, and another officer stepped in. This one carried a file, his face grave. He whispered something to the first officer, too low for the others to hear. Whatever it was, it changed everything. The first officer straightened, his gaze heavy on Malik. We just got a report, he said slowly. The suspect in the theft ran through the alley 2 blocks from the store and dropped something. We recovered it. Malik frowned. Dropped what? The officer pulled a small plastic evidence bag from the file and placed it on the table. Inside was a cell phone, scratched, dirty, but intact. According to the initial check, the officer continued, this phone belongs to the suspect. And guess what? The photos on it, they look a lot like you. Malik's stomach dropped. His eyes widened as he leaned closer, staring at the device. Through the plastic, he could see the faint outline of a cracked screen. He'd never seen the phone before in his life. That's not mine, he burst out. I don't even know whose phone that is. His mother's face twisted with disbelief. You can't be serious. You find some phone in an alley, and now you're pinning it on my son. The young woman recording muttered, this is ridiculous, capturing every second. But the officer ignored them, sliding the bag closer to Malik as if daring him to prove otherwise. Malik shook his head violently. I swear, I don't know anything about that. It's not mine. The tension in the room thickened, every second dragging like an eternity. Malik's mother reached across the table, touching her son's cuffed hands, her eyes softening for the first time. We'll fight this, she whispered fiercely. I won't let them break you. Malik swallowed hard, clinging to her words, though his body trembled. Just then, the door cracked open again. A uniformed officer poked his head in, breathless, as if he'd been running. Sir, he said quickly, looking at the first officer, you'll want to see this. What is it? They caught the suspect. Just now. He tried to pawn something stolen from the store. The room froze. Malik's heart leapt. His mother's eyes widened. The young woman with the phone let out a gasp. The officer in charge narrowed his eyes. Bring him in, he ordered. The breathless officer nodded and disappeared. Malik sat frozen, hopes surging and colliding with dread. Because if they really had caught the suspect, the real suspect, then this nightmare could finally end. But deep down, a gnawing question twisted inside him. What if the person they brought in looked even more like him than the blurry photo did? What if this nightmare wasn't about to end, but was only just beginning? The heavy door rattled again. Steps echoed down the hall. The handle turned. Everyone in the room, Malik, his mother, the witness, the woman with the phone, and the officers, held their breath as the door creaked open, and the suspect was dragged inside. The door to the interrogation room slammed open so hard it rattled the camera fixed in the corner. Malik jerked upright, his pulse thundering in his ears. The officer across from him tensed, hand hovering near his belt. A woman stepped into the room, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. She was dressed in a navy suit, her badge clipped to the lapel. Her eyes swept over the scene in a glance that was both sharp and cold, and when they landed on Malik, he felt a jolt of both relief and dread. Uncuff him, she said flatly. The officer at the table blinked. Detective Rowe, we're in the middle of. I said uncuff him, she repeated, her tone brooking no argument. Now, with clear reluctance, the officer stood, dug out the key, and released the shackles from Malik's wrists. The metal clinked as it fell away, leaving behind red welts etched into his skin. Malik rubbed his wrists gently, the sting a reminder of how close he had come to breaking. Detective Rowe set a folder on the table, then looked Malik in the eye. You're free to go, she said, though her voice was cautious. But before you do, I need to ask you a few questions. Malik's relief curdled into confusion. Free to go, he asked, his voice hoarse. But they said. I know what they said, Rowe cut in. She cast a scathing look at the two officers lingering by the wall. But I've just come from the incident report, and we've got some developments. Malik leaned forward, wary. What kind of developments? She slid a photo across the table. Malik's breath hitched. It was another grainy still, this time clearer than the first. The figure in the image wore a dark hoodie, his face partially shadowed as he sprinted past a storefront. For a second, Malik's stomach flipped. The resemblance was uncanny. Same height, same build, same kind of hoodie. Is this you? Ro asked calmly. No. Malik shot back immediately, his voice rising in panic. That's not me, I swear. I was walking home. I didn't steal anything. Rose studied him carefully, tapping her finger against the photo. Then help me understand something. Because whoever this is, he looks an awful lot like you. And if it's not you, then someone out there is about to let you take the fall for what they did. The words sank into Malik like lead. His throat felt dry, his hands trembling against the table. Someone who looked like him. Someone close enough to be mistaken for him. Ro leaned back in her chair. We've got units canvassing the neighborhood. But if you know anything, anyone you've seen around, anyone who might have reason to frame you, now is the time to tell me. I don't know anyone like that, Malik said, his voice cracking. I just go to school, play basketball, help my mom with my little sister. That's it. I don't know who that is. The detective studied him for a long, silent moment. Then she stood, gathering the folder under her arm. You should call your mother, she said quietly. She's here. Malik's chest tightened with both relief and shame. He wanted nothing more than to run into her arms, to let her tell him it would be okay. But part of him couldn't shake the fear. What if the truth didn't matter? What if the lookalike out there would always be the reason suspicion followed him like a shadow? Before he could speak, another officer hurried into the room, slightly out of breath. Detective, he said, we just got word. Patrol picked someone up a few blocks from the pawn shop. Matches the description exactly. He had merchandise on him. Malik's head snapped up. His heart hammered wildly. Was this it? The real thief? Rose's eyes narrowed. Bring him in. The officer nodded and disappeared. The room fell into a thick silence. Malik's pulse raced so hard it hurt. He thought of the crowd that had watched him shoved into the cruiser, the phones recording, the humiliation burning in his chest. Would they see this? Would they see him cleared? Moments later, footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy dragging. Then the door opened, and two officers escorted in a boy Malik's age, wrists cuffed. Malik's breath caught. The boy looked like him. Almost exactly like him. Same height. Same skin tone. Same lean build. Even the same kind of hoodie. But his eyes, hard, defiant, were nothing like Malik's. For a moment, it was like staring into a distorted mirror. The officers shoved the boy into the chair opposite Malik. He slouched back, smirking faintly, as if this was all some kind of game. His hoodie was darker, dirt-stained, and in his pocket, a wallet and chain glimmered faintly, evidence of the theft. Detective Rose's gaze flicked between the two boys, her expression unreadable. Well, she said at last, her voice low. It looks like we've got ourselves a problem. Malik's blood ran cold. Because even though the real suspect was sitting across from him, the resemblance was so striking that no one in the room could immediately tell them apart. And deep down, Malik feared what that meant, that the nightmare wasn't over. It was only just beginning.